Welcome, everybody. We are just getting started here, and here we are on Instagram. Awesome. Welcome to Bridges Not Walls. As you know, this is our Jewish community relations vlogcast, and every week we have on another guest who is a friend to our Jewish community, who we interview. We give updates about everything going on in the community. And really, this is a chance for you all to interact with some of the faces and names and people that we get to interact with as a Jewish organization, and give you a chance to ask the questions that you'd like to ask, besides the ones that we've arranged for in advance. Today, we're going to jump right in, but I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the pain that we are all, I think, going through right now. As most of you know, yesterday, the hostages who were killed were returned to Israel. The Bibas family, who so many of us were following for so long, praying that they would come back alive, and we waited for confirmation that the people returned were, in fact, Kafir, Ariel, and Shiri Bibas. And yesterday we found out that Kafir and Ariel Bibas were returned, and unfortunately, Shiri Bibas was not. We are all heartbroken. We are awaiting news on not only the well-being or status of Shiri Bibas, but also who this person was that was returned, along with the Bibas children. Our hearts go out to Yarden Bibas and all of our friends in Israel. And as we enter Shabbat, I think we're all praying that we see more hostages returned alive, and that this brings us closer to being able to live in peace. So that being said, shifting gears, we are very lucky today to have on Chief Chito Walker, the chief of the Charleston Police Department. Chief Walker follows an incredible chief named Luther Reynolds, who sadly passed away some time ago, and Chief Chito Walker is incredibly beloved in our Jewish community, has a long history of relationships in our Jewish community, and considering everything that the Jewish community is going through right now, and all the challenges that we face and that also our neighbors face as it relates to security and safety, we are incredibly lucky to have Chief Chito Walker in this position, and to have him with us today to answer some questions that are on all of our minds. And without further ado, here is the chief. Welcome. Thank you for being with us today.
Oh, thank you so much, Brandon. I'm truly honored, and please, my condolences to the entire community. I have been keeping up with what's going on in Israel, so
Thank you.
my condolences, and you guys are always in my heart and prayer. So just please allow me to open up with that.
Well, thanks. It's been an incredibly challenging time, and you know, yeah, there was also an attempted terror attack in Israel yesterday. Thankfully, it didn't go as planned. There were buses that were empty that exploded, that had been set up to go off while people were riding them this morning. Yeah, it's just a roller coaster in Israel right now, between bodies being returned and live hostages being returned to their families, and it seems like every joyous moment is tempered by some new tragedy. But but we have to just keep appreciating the happy moments and celebrate the people who returned. And you know, Israel is a resilient country. The Jewish people are resilient, and again, I think everybody wants to live in peace and be able to pursue all of their life's goals, and hopefully we'll get to a place where that can happen. But Charleston is a place where we luckily get to live in peace, especially compared to everything else going on in the world right now, and so much of that has to do with our incredible police department, keeping our community safe. So just to jump right in, would you share with us a little bit about how you came to Charleston? I know you were born in Greenville. How you came to Charleston, how you joined the Charleston Police Department, and what that journey's been like for you.
Oh yeah, man. Well, first and foremost, I graduated from South Carolina State University, right up the road in Orangeburg. So a lot of connections to Charleston. It was three places I tested upon graduating, and Charleston was one, Charlotte Mecklenburg was the second, and Gwinnett County Police, right, suburb outside of Atlanta. I got family members in all three locations. So, at the time, Chief Greenberg was the chief of police at the Charleston Police Department, man. So, and he was a legend in his own right in the criminal justice community. And one of the biggest attractions, other than having my wife and her entire family, soon to be wife, and her entire family from Mount Pleasant and here in Charleston, Chief Greenberg was just head over heels ahead of everyone else in terms of education, the community engagement piece. Even before it was called community engagement, he was doing everything back then, and it was really attractive. It was the only agency I had applied for where it was no exception. You had to have a 4-year college degree. So it spoke volumes of the quality of officers that, they were looking for, and the expectations not only to be hired, but once you got hired, to continue your education and not settle for mediocrity. So I think it just spoke volumes to the culture, the quality of service that we, come to accustomed to here in Charleston. And I always say it didn't start with me. I was blessed to be indoctrinated into this culture and to make it better than what I found. So that's kind of how I ended up here. Just the culture that the police department and the reputation that it had.
Well, Judy Corsaro, our recently retired CEO, just is watching, and wanted to let you know that she feels that we are blessed to have your leadership and support, which is actually a perfect lead into our next question. I know that Judy and others, as after Chief Reynolds passed away, there were several people who were candidates for the job, and I know that when you were picked, and even when your name was on the list, folks in the Jewish community were buzzing. Everybody had a different story about how they knew Chito Walker, and without exception, every single person that I spoke to was saying, "Wow, we really hope that Deputy Chief Chito gets this job." But I know that these relationships go back a long way. What has been your relationship with the Jewish community? Why do so many people in our community know you and have experiences with you?
Oh man, it started probably. I came through when I first got hired. My first assignment was West Ashley. So working with the congregation over there and just Miss Judy with the JCC, just a long and standing friendship, and where I come from, especially being able to protect our community. When you start talking about bullying and different things that we experience, and hatred is not just something that's isolated to one demographic, So being in a position that I was in, I always felt like I was a big brother. I was always behind the scenes. And then my background just in tactics and some of the assignments that Chief Greenberg had me in at the time, it put me pretty much front and center with a lot of the issues that were going on in a bunch of different communities, be it gun violence, being able to protect when things were coming up, assignments, some of the events that we had over there at the Jewish Community Center back in the day. I always end up being like front and center on a tactical element, and it just developed into a budding friendship. Miss Judy was one of the first people I met, probably when I first got promoted to sergeant, and I was assigned over the tactical team. So, but it just blossomed. Our relationship just blossomed. But making sure that everyone feels safe and secure here in our community, what we have control over, and that's something that never got lost in translation with us here at the Charleston Police Department.
Well, well, the feeling is definitely mutual in the Jewish community, and to your point about police's role in community outreach and really addressing the concerns of so many different communities. It's shocking sometimes to think about how much our different sub communities, minority communities have in common in terms of the challenges that we're facing, and hate crime being a big one of them. I know that as we started our Stamp Out Hate Coalition, well, not only did the Charleston Police Department sign on right away to support advocacy for a hate crime law, but we found that this was a concern facing all of our minority communities and folks outside of the minority communities. Unfortunately, hate is still a thing that exists in our society, and unfortunately, South Carolina is one of 2 states that doesn't have a hate crime law, which is unfortunate, I think, especially for law enforcement, as you all seek to prosecute crimes that you encounter. What are your thoughts on hate crime legislation? And could you tell us a little bit about the local ordinance that we have in place in the city, and how law enforcement uses that ordinance to address hate?
Yeah. So, and to your point, we need a state statute, but it seemed like it's jumping a lot of hurdles to try to get that over the finish line. Because right now we need something with teeth and data, and there's no way to capture the data if it's not being reported or underreported. And I was proud when the city did take the initial steps to at least draft a city ordinance so we can at least keep up with the amount of incidents that we were having or have in the city. So that's how that came about. But it has to go further because that's only a city ordinance. And usually when we have different things like that or the significant incidents, we're not going to charge them with a city ordinance. We're looking for charges appropriate for the acts at hand, which usually if it's assault or aggravated assault, is labeled as such, but we don't want to miss the element of what was behind these type of incidents. So that's kind of our current, fight to try to get that over the finish line, at least on a state level, so we can have teeth to back us when these charges are appropriate. We don't want to be charging with a lesser charge. That's what the ordinance would do, but that's a continued effort on a lot of people's part, and I'm still optimistic that we'll ultimately achieve it. It's just in being empathetic and really, until you've been a victim of any type of incident, it's hard to put it in perspective, and empathy is one of those things that we're looking for. We don't want people to join that club to say you had to go through something bad to get to that level of responsibility. And when we're talking about accountability for people that decide to commit these type of incidents. So I'm optimistic. I think we can achieve that level, but it's going to take a lot of effort from our community throughout South Carolina to give it over the finish line. So, and we're trying to lead the charge.
So, you mentioned Chief Greenberg,
Yeah,
and he was another beloved member of our Jewish community, a member at Synagogue Emmanuel in West
yeah,
Ashley. And gosh, I remember being a little kid at Synagogue Emmanuel, and my grandfather, grabbing my sleeve and whispering to me, "That's Chief Greenberg over there, the police chief." And it was there was so much pride in our community that he was the police chief. And I remember a historic photo of him standing in front of Klan members in Marion Square, where free speech. They were allowed to march, and I remember the story went that Mayor Joe Riley, who was younger then, had sent Chief Greenberg to read the riot act, basically, or the rules to the Klan, because he embodied Black and Jewish identity, which were two identities, obviously, that the Klan had a great deal of hate for. How do you think this challenge has changed in the time that you've been in law enforcement? And what tools can we, as I guess community members and organizations, what can we do to help law enforcement in addressing hate?
well, I think just being steadfast, and it's really, we're all in it together. And like I said, I'm very unapologetic about what we do to serve Charleston. This is our community, and we're just not going to tolerate certain things. And I'm not shy in the least bit when we're talking about protecting every facet, every community of our city. And when you start talking about hate, it's not tolerated. I don't care what your religion, your race, your gender, it don't matter. The golden rule is the golden rule for a reason, and that's how I was brought up. I can't help what other people have in their heart, but we can do our part if that makes sense, especially the platform that we have as public safety. And it's not unique um, across the board. Every community is different. That's why the dialogue and these type of engagements and communications are paramount. We don't go in with an approach that's one size fit all. We don't. We don't. We have to get to know each other. We have to be able to communicate, and it's okay to disagree without being disagreeable. That's been our platform. Like I say, that's been my career in public safety. That's been the Charleston way. Um, you know, I don't allow other people's shortcomings to define who I am as an individual, a culture, a community. And that's what we preach at the Charleston Police Department. So making sure that everyone has a voice and that we're able to communicate with no matter what your demographic background is our platform. And it registers. People notice it. It's being genuine. And it starts with the leadership. We've been blessed with leadership in Charleston, and I'm talking about from the city standpoint that it matters to them. No matter what the community, no matter your political affiliation, community first, and it's always been Charleston as a holistic community first. And I've been blessed to inherit that here. So I hope that answered the question, Brandon. But
Yeah.
but
Oh, absolutely. So, some people might not know all the different ways that the Charleston Police Department works behind the scenes to make sure that our places of worship and organizations are safe in the face of rising anti-Semitism. I think most people don't know that for the past 2 years, we've worked together with the ADL to do a South Carolina law enforcement conference under the leadership of Charleston PD, inviting other departments to our city to learn about hate crimes and anti-Semitism. What are some of the other ways that that Charleston PD works with our synagogues, for example, and our secure community network regional security advisor? How does that work?
So all communication, all dialogue, and a lot of things behind the scenes. Our platform, and it always have been, whether it's our Jewish community, our Christian-based, faith-based churches, is the dialogue and communication in front of any incidents. We don't like to wait till we have a tragedy or something happen in another part of the country, another part of the world, and then we start trying to communicate. And I talked about our relationship with the Jewish Community Center, and that started when I was way back when I first started patrolling in Team 4 in 2000. Those relationships matter, and you build on those relationships. So if you experiencing or you see something that's happening in a different part of the country, a different part of the world that could directly impact us here in Charleston, it's important to communicate and dialogue. Intel sharing. That's one of the things that's recently to making sure that the intel is spread across our public safety community, not just with the Charleston Police Department, but also it's the Sheriff's Office, Berkeley County, SLED. Well, really all of us is in this together, and we take pride in how we bring forth a safe and secure Charleston. And I think that's important. And that's what we continuously trying to do here. So just making sure that we're talking. And then you start talking about implementation of tactics. My background is SWAT. So making sure that we do our assessments, especially of our houses of worship, our synagogues, our schools, points of contact, visibility. All these things matter, making sure our kids know who we are, making sure I know who's supposed to be at the house of worship that I'm assigned to. It's not just there as an assignment. You're there as a representation of our public safety community. So we expect you to get to know the people at these locations, not just an assignment, but relationships, and it matters. So that's one of the biggest things, how we keep Charleston secure and out of the national spotlight,
Out of national spotlight. Yeah. I mean, certainly, for our Jewish community as well, since 2015, which is now somehow 10 years ago, when Mother Emanuel was attacked, I think we all were impacted in so many ways by that hate crime downtown targeting the Black community. And it certainly affected the way that we in the Jewish community look at security for our houses of worship. And I know it's been a big factor in the way that Charleston has approached policing. Obviously, since 10/7 or 7/10, as they refer to it in Israel, there's been a rise in anti-Semitism, and it's a different kind of anti-Semitism than I think we are trained to deal with in the Jewish community. And I will never forget that the way that I found out about the terror attack was that I got a call from Jack O'Toole, who was the communications director for Mayor Tecklenburg, at something like 7:30 in the morning. And I woke up and he said, "We know what's going on." And I said, "Well, what do you mean? What's going on?" And he had called to tell me that they had already stepped up patrols around the houses of worship in our city, and that they were paying attention in case there was any fallout to our Jewish community locally, and really demonstrated understanding of the connection between our Jewish community and the state of Israel. I wonder how how, if at all, policing has changed. What new challenges have arisen since the terror attack in Israel? How those challenges have like manifested in Charleston in terms of things that the Charleston Police Department have had to deal with.
Well, and yeah, I kind of talked about it, and I was front and center when that happened. I was part of the response at Mother Emanuel. So when you start talking about um, the different incidents that we have experienced in Charleston, and one of the things I always tell any community, these threats are always here, and it's unfortunate. It's my job to mitigate them, and my role to mitigate the opportunities for any players to be successful if they decide to try to do anything locally here in our jurisdiction. But making sure that one, the intel piece, I can't overstate that enough, that we're communicating with our state, local, national partners on every different level, so we're not surprised if something happens. It's the same way that we approach schools. That's always evolving. Our response and making sure we have our officers all the resources they need to win any situation presented to us here on a local level. Um, but no, we went into a playbook when that happened on October 7th. Um, I think I may have just got the announcement or got the position officially as chief of police. And my Rolodex are long, so I was able to contact, Jack. I was able to contact all our houses of worship, in communication with the sheriff's office, Chef Graziano at the time, and physically was able to go and touch every location in our community that I felt may have been impacted or had some type of fear of what was happening in Israel, and reassure them that we are aware and we are already taking measures to make sure that our home front is secure and will be secure moving forward. So I think it was important. It's just a reassurance. Um, a lot of communities don't know how it is to live in fear or always having to look over your shoulder, and that can be very, very stressful and anxiety, and you start talking about trauma. How do we mitigate that? And us in public safety, we play a big part in that, and just being able to communicate and empathize with our community to say, you're not in this by yourselves, we are in it with you, and we have the resources to make sure none of that surfaces in our locations. And that was like paramount for me on October 7th. So it started early that morning and played out, the rest of that week for the most part.
Well, I can't tell you how much that meant to us. I think my first instinct whenever anything happens that's targeting the Jewish community, I have this instinct to drive around the corner to the closest synagogue, Congregation Dor Tikva, where I know my family's going to be on Shabbat. And it was both on Shabbat and a major holiday when this happened. So for some observant Jews, they were getting word of this, second and third hand. And I know to see law enforcement around and present, and to hear that they were abreast of the situation was such a tremendous comfort to so many people in a moment where they're afraid. Because to your point, when one part of your community, your identity, your religion, your people is attacked, it really causes this fear that's community wide, just like a hate crime, really.
Mhm.
The thing that makes it different than a regular crime is that its intention is to really strike fear in the hearts of an entire community, whether it's a fear that will manifest into something else or not. It's a very tangible fear. I just wanted to say that we deeply appreciated the way that you all responded. So To segue a little bit from that question, obviously since 10/7, Charleston has seen a lot of new kinds of activist groups popping up, and public demonstrations have become more common. It's certainly the first time in my time in Charleston that I think I've seen so much activity around in terms of protests around something happening thousands of miles away. And for the most part, obviously, these demonstrations have not devolved into violence or threats or property destruction. But I wonder, as the folks responsible for kind of keeping the public peace, how do you balance kind of public safety with preserving these folks' free speech rights? And how do you kind of ensure that demonstrations don't escalate into violence? I know, for example, that the counter protesters show up, and you've got sometimes in situations where you're keeping people from escalating conflict. How do you strike that balance between free speech and public safety?
Well, it is exactly what you said, Brandon. It's free speech, and we're obligated to protect everyone's freedoms. Okay, so allowing them to express themselves and public safety is a contingency plan, planning, communication, intel, and executing of the plan. These things, like it may what be termed as a spontaneous protest, but it's not spontaneous for us. It's their rights to go and do and voice their displeasure or whatever is the cause at that moment, and ensuring them that they're safe to do so. Also with the counter protesters, and that just comes with a contingency plan, communicating, finding out who's the organizer, and developing those relationships, and making sure everyone understand that we're not there to prevent anyone from expressing their rights, but we're also not going to allow other people rights, freedoms, and safety to be put in harm's way because something goes sideways because the organizer didn't plan for something. So it's balance and making sure that we have a contingency in place, making sure that we executing training when these things pop up. So it's not foreign. So we are creatures of habit in public safety. This is what we do in the downtime, is making sure that we can handle any situation that's thrown at us, and we're not infringing on anybody's civil liberties. So it's balance, and that don't get lost in translation on us.
Well, I know that it's been a challenge, and even beyond just the anti-Israel protests, there've been other protests popping up recently, especially in the wake of really kind of, I guess, unprecedented policies coming from new leadership in our White House. Obviously folks are reacting very strongly.
Yeah.
How has that changed anything for you all?
Not really, and that's what I say. The cause may change. Our readiness doesn't change. We have to be prepared, and just making sure that we're communicating with any groups, organizers, and just making sure that they understand, man, we're there to take care of them, even if they don't feel like we are. But we're not gonna infringe on civil liberties. We're gonna make sure that our community is safe, our business community is safe, our residents are safe, and the protesters and counter protesters, everyone is safe. So it don't really change our footprint. It may change like personnel, but making sure that we have a contingency to handle anything thrown our way, and we're communicating our intent to the community and to our leadership. But that it hadn't changed. Our footprint really has not changed. It's just making sure we're able to respond, efficiently and effectively.
Well, you'll have to forgive me because I'm going to ask you a controversial question.
Mm-hmm.
In kind of in the same vein, I guess, with the crackdown on happening on illegal immigration, and certainly the directive coming from national leadership to to enforce immigration laws. I guess is it challenging as a police department when the fear exists in a community, whether it be immigrant community or the Black community? Is it challenging getting those folks to report crimes to law enforcement?
It is.
They're afraid.
It is, and this is where reverting back to what I was talking about earlier about those relationships and communicating. We up against you talk about social media, misinformation, depending on what news circuit you watch. We're up against all that and making sure that our community, I have control over the Charleston community, okay? The residents of Charleston, making sure they understand our platform, understand there's no misinformation. I still need them to report issues in their community. I can speak on what's happening here, our response, our expectations, and just making sure they understand know where we stand. But it's been challenging, but you're fighting against all kind of different fashions and misinformation and different elements in the community that's don't have their best interests at heart. So, but we make it happen.
Well, I can't imagine how you all manage to balance all of these challenges. I do not envy you because I certainly know that as organizers of communities, we deal with trying to balance so many of these so many different factors, especially with a changing political landscape, especially with changing landscape as it relates to anti-Semitism. So thank you for your work and for keeping us all safe. One of the highlights of my time here at Federation was that we had a couple of young soldiers visit us from Israel almost right after, maybe a few months after the conflict over there started. They were brought by an organization called Jewish Agency for Israel, who are our partners in a lot of different programs that we do, but especially as it relates to Israel. And they did a tour of the community. They had to be very quiet about being here for their own safety, so they wouldn't be targeted. But one of the highlights, so they were surveyed when they got back to. They visited our synagogues, for example. They visited, I think, other soldiers, and they were here really to talk about their experiences. But one of the highlights of their trip, when we surveyed them, they said the highlight of their trip to Charleston was meeting with you. And I was blessed to be able to sit in that meeting and hear the dialogue between you and the soldiers from Israel. What was that experience like for you, and what did you take away from the conversation that you had with them?
Oh man, Brandon, I was so humbled. I was just humbled. I think as a society, and especially in America, we become desensitized to violence. We see it as almost like this something that happens somewhere else, if that makes sense. Is at the drop of our fingertip. We can go on any social media platform and look at violence, shootings, death, and we become so desensitized where we lose our empathy. And when I talk to those soldiers and to hear firsthand, their regiment, it brings it back full circle of why we choose to serve in public safety and protect our community. And they just brought it full circle, man. And I was just humbled beyond belief, not just at what they were doing, but they were young. They were so young, and just it's a different life, and that don't get lost in translation on me, man. So for us to be able to talk about, one, why they do what they do is to protect their home, protect their loved ones, They're fighting for people that can't fight for themselves sometimes. It's parallel to why we do public safety. I'm fighting for people that may not be able to fight for themselves and provide a platform. And I don't take that for granted. I'm very intentional with how we carry ourselves at the police department, how we engage with our community, the empathy, professionalism, the tactical training, the expertise in our craft, and not becoming mediocre. And when we met those young soldiers that literally had to be kind of snuck in our community so they didn't get a lot of backlash, man, it was just humbling, and I truly enjoyed it, I'm so glad they had an opportunity to at least take some value in what we had to say, but it was humbling. If one word, humbling.
Well, I know that they were incredibly moved by the experience and went back home and told all of their fellow soldiers about being in Charleston, about the support that they just even the moral support that they received. And this all happened during a time where the backdrop was these really out of control anti-Israel protests, and in some cases, crimes being committed, and in the name of anti-Israel causes, and for them to have that experience in Charleston was a game changer for them. So thank you for taking the time to meet with them. I know it meant a lot to them, and it meant a lot to me as well, and our community. One last, maybe not one last question, but Chief Reynolds was one of the most beloved police chiefs that I can remember, and just he was such an incredible man, and not just as an individual, but I think also from what I hear from some of your officers as a leader of the Charleston Police Department. What do you think? What do you see as his legacy in the Charleston Police Department, and what pieces of that are you carrying on in your leadership?
Love and compassion, without even hesitation. You say what legacy he left. Um, People don't realize it, man, and I tell Miss Caroline this all the time. This wasn't part of my original plan. I've always been behind the scenes, operational. I'm still trying to be behind the scenes and not make it about me. But Chief Reynolds was only here 5 years, and
Wow.
the impact that he had on this community, you would thought he was here like Chief Greenberg 20 years, when in terms of just his spirit, his compassion for life, his love for people. He always he always talked to me about relationships. Relationships. Chito is all about relationships, and he believed that. He lived that. So his legacy is that. I've been blessed with some great leaderships and shoulders to stand on here in Charleston. I'm indoctrinated by Chief Greenberg. He took us under his wing. He gave me assignments when I wasn't even off probation, and he was ahead of his time. Fast forward to Chief Mullen, technology, probably one of the smartest individuals I ever met in my life. And we got blessed to have like a heart and spirit of Chief Reynolds round us off. And I believe in purpose. I believe in God's plan, and I do believe Chief was right what we needed right at that perfect time. And he taught us that it's okay to show compassion even in our profession internally. I'm not even talking about externally, because I thought we really did a really good job with that. But internally, it's okay to love and say I love you and truly mean it, express it. He did it on a daily basis. I don't know. He took me under his wing, and man, we just blossomed. We were able to do a lot, and a lot of people don't realize that Chief was only here 5 years, and it was almost like a lifetime that, what it seemed like to us at the Charleston Police Department. He was perfect timing for him. So we love him. He was truly our brother, man.
Well, I know that we all miss him a lot, and I didn't plan on getting choked up, but he was just a lovely man, and I know that particularly in the context of this conversation, community outreach, relationship building with all different stakeholders in the Charleston area. He was so incredible at that and focused so much on I think and he reflected that culturally into the department. I've heard from so many folks, like for example Terry Cherry,
Yep.
that when Chief Reynolds came into the department, so many of the changes that he implemented had to do with making sure, to your earlier point, that the folks being recruited were folks that were not only qualified, but really shared the values of the Charleston Police Department, and were invested in community relationship building. We're so grateful for his time as chief, and so grateful to have you as his successor. And I could ask you questions all day. I have at least 100 more questions on my mind, but I know that you are busy keeping our city safe, and I want to thank you for that, and on behalf of our community, we're just grateful for your leadership, and I'm personally grateful for the time that you gave to us today, to speak to some of these issues. Is there anything else that you want to say before you go?
Oh, well, Brandon, I think I've said it every time I get opportunity, especially at the different synagogues or any event y'all have. Your community is our community, and I want you to know that firsthand. Anytime that you're going through something, you're not going through it by yourselves. We're all going through it. I think that's what really makes Charleston special. Um, that quality, that empathy, and just making sure that, like I say, I'm unapologetic about being selfishly when I talk about protecting Charleston. When something happened to one member of our community, it's happening to all of us. And I want everyone to know that that's listening to me on this call. I don't care what you identify as, your religion. I don't care if it's happening and it's impacting you in a negative way, and especially in terms of public safety, fear of violence. It's happening to all of us. It impacts us. And I'm sincere about that. And when you start talking about who we're bringing into our culture, especially from a public safety standpoint, we're very, very selective on who we hire. We're very, very intentional in bringing someone into the culture of Charleston. So we're not just trying to fill gaps. That's never been our style, and that started way back with Chief Greenberg. And like I'm telling you, you had to have a 4-year college degree to even get considered to service this community. That has never been lost on me. That's a tradition that we continue to build on. It makes our community stronger. We don't always get it right, and when we don't get it right, being able to come forth and share those little mishaps and our faults with the community, accountability is paramount. So, like I say, if I don't express not one thing today, that it's our community, okay? Everything is ours. So something is happening in one segment of the community is happening to all of us. So I appreciate you. I look forward to our next events, and I'm here if anyone needs me. I'm just a phone call away.
Well, we know that, and the people who are watching now know that, and again, we're lucky to have your leadership at our Charleston Police Department, and to your point, the fact that you can afford to be selective in who you choose to join the Charleston Police Department speaks to the quality of the Charleston Police Department, that so many people want to be a part of it. And again, we're just unspeakably grateful to you all, and again, I'm grateful that you took the time today. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Brandon. Love you guys.
All right. Have a great day, Chief.
All right.
Well, that was Chief Walker. And just to repeat what I said to the chief, we are so grateful for his leadership. Couple of brief updates for you all who are watching and who will be watching later. We have an eventful month ahead. Speaking to some of the issues that we just discussed, we are having our second annual Jewish Community Advocacy Day at the State House on March the 5th. We'll be joined by the Jewish Federations of Columbia and Greenville, and folks from all around the state, including from Hilton Head, Beaufort, Horry County area, but all in all, the PD, the Midlands, the Low Country, the Upstate, Jewish people from all over are going to be showing up to advocate for, in part, public safety, for our places of worship, hate crimes legislation, as always, as we'll continue to update, as we'll continue to advocate for, and also any issues impacting our Jewish community as they continue to pop up at the State House. But chief among them, making sure that we have a voice at the table, that as decisions get made, folks remember that there is a thriving, strong Jewish community presence here in South Carolina. And we'll continue to make sure that our community is well represented. Advocacy Day is on March the 5th. You can register in advance, which I would highly recommend you do, because we are limited in the space that we have in the rooms that we'll be entering. We have to keep the numbers under 100, and those free tickets are going quickly. We'll be driving up at pretty early in the morning, so we can get there by 9:30. We're going to have the opportunity to meet with the Attorney General. We're working on arranging meetings with the governor and lieutenant governor. We will be honored with a resolution from the House floor. It will be a really and somebody from Jewish Federations of North America, Eli Byrne, their director of state advocacy, is flying out to meet us. It's going to be an amazing event. I'm going to put up a link so that you all can register. If you go to bit.ly/Jewish advocacy, it takes you right to the registration page. And before we have our day at the State House, we will be joined by Bailey Vincent, the Director of Government Affairs for the Charleston Metro Chamber of Commerce. On Sunday, March the 2nd, we'll be doing an advocacy training session. And really, the focus is going to be how we can use unifying language in an incredibly politically divisive time, so that we can be effective in our advocacy across partisan lines, and so that we can bring our community together in what is a very divisive and difficult political time. We cannot afford to be divided as a community as we face so many common challenges. With that being said, I join you all in watching at Times of Israel, and wherever you get your news for updates about the hostages in Israel. Several more hostages are slated for release over this Shabbat, and I ask you all to pray for their safety and for the safety of all of the hostages and all of our friends and family in Israel. And with that, thank you for joining us on Bridges Not Walls. where we seek to build bridges, not walls. And I will update you as soon as we have our next episode scheduled. And wish you all Shabbat Shalom, and hope that it's a restful one, and one that we can celebrate together as we get news of the hostages being released. Thank you all. Have a great day, a great Shabbat. Bye.